I'll call the meeting to order. Why don't we start with a roll call?
Malcolm Webb.
Here.
Jeff McKim.
Here.
Kate Rosenbarger.
Here.
And I'll note the absence of Kurt Zorn and Vanessa McCleary. I'm Jane Coopersmith, staff.
Alex Crowley, staff.
Larry Allen, legal staff.
And do I need to mention the other attendees, or is it not
No,
necessary?
you have to, but for as a matter of courtesy, I'll allow our guests to introduce themselves.
Okay, great.
Go ahead, Amber.
Okay, Amber Scobie, the Executive Director of the Bloomington Housing Authority.
I'm Tyler Kowachnik. I'm a partner with Ice Miller. We're serving as bond counsel on the project that'll be before the commission today.
I'm Chris Cashman. I'm an associate with Ice Miller, working with Amber and Tyler on the project.
Very good. So next on the order of business is the approval of minutes for June and July. Are there any corrections or questions for that?
No corrections. Malcolm has left our meeting.
Thanks. And hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move we approve.
Got a motion by Jeff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kate. All in favor?
Jane, could you call the roll, please?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'll call
That's
it.
right, that's right, sorry.
Malcolm Webb,
Aye.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Thank you.
And next on the agenda, moving the recurring meeting date to the third Tuesday at 4 p.m. Any discussion on the motion? Oh, first, I guess, does anyone want to move that motion?
I would just ask Kate, did you confirm that that will work for you?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
I'll have something right up until 4 every now and then, but I'm okay.
Okay,
All right. So, go ahead.
Move approval of the recurring meeting date to the third Tuesdays at 4.
Very good. And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I'll call the roll. Sorry.
Sorry.
Malcolm Webb,
Aye.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
and Kate Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Thanks.
My apologies to our guests. I was a beta theta pi, and so voting always consisted of half the room saying aye and the other half going yeah. Sorry if I regress. Next item on the agenda is the resolution regarding RAD 2 LP. I'll turn that over to the staff.
Larry?
Sure. Actually, Chris, do you want to, or Amber, do you want to present really quickly? This is just to give the brief overview. So this is for the RAD conversion of the Crestmont community. You all saw this actually, I think last December to January, where we had the initial resolution approving our support of this. And now it is time for the issuance of notes. We have here today the individuals that introduce themselves at the top of the meeting who can give you a presentation and give you more information about the resolution and the notes that will be issued.
Yeah, I can start. This is Chris speaking, and thanks to Larry and then others for all their help getting us on the agenda, and thanks to the EDC for including us today for this presentation. As Larry mentioned, this group was before you in December for an inducement resolution, and the inducement resolution allowed the borrower and Amber and her team to make an application of the IHCDA for bond volume and tax credits. So this is a very similar presentation that was delivered in December. And we'll start with Amber on the next slide, discussing the project for the next few slides, and then I can jump in at the point where we're discussing the structure of the bonds and the tax credits. So Amber, if you're ready.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Chris. Just a reminder of the Crestmont community. It is in the northwest section of Bloomington. It's just north of 12th Street, east of Lindbergh, south of 15th, and west of Monroe. It was built in the 1960s as part of the large urban renewal efforts. It's 196 units. It's also in the same community where our main office and our community building are. So we are looking forward to the financing getting assembled to do some major renovation work of every unit in the Crestmont community. So I can go to the next slide. I mentioned it was 196 units, but we will be adding some additional apartments. So we are reconfiguring some of the studio units to be regular 1-bedroom units. We're also converting some of the 3-bedroom townhomes to additional 1-bedroom units. And that, just to give you a sense, our wait list for 1-bedroom families is anywhere from 100 to 150 applicants consistently, whereas maybe a 2 or 3-bedroom wait list is less than 10 people always. So significant demand for those 1-bedrooms. So that's why you will see it going from 196 units to 204 units here. We have lots of amenities nearby. I mentioned the community building at 1002 Summit Street, also the Ferguson Crestmont Boys and Girls Club. The South Central Community Action Program is close by, along with their Head Start, Macomb Community Kitchen, lots of things in this area. The community will be continue to be managed by the Housing Authority, so we'll do the property management and all the maintenance activities. The clients, it will look and feel much like public housing to them, in keeping the Housing Authority within the management. And also, all of the units will still be receiving a rental subsidy through what's called a HAP contract. So that's a housing assistance payment contract through the federal Section 8 program. So public housing receives funding through Section 9, and what our refinancing through the rental assistance demonstration program will do is just take that funding and convert it to a Section 8 federal subsidy. So each of the units will be income restricted to those who are at 60% AMI and below, and also have access to that federal assistance. Next slide. Just some pictures. We have some of our townhome units, what some of the renovations that we completed around 2008 look like. Also, you know, our community building, if you want a reminder of what Crestmont looks like. Next slide. The renovation will focus a lot on updating some code requirements. You know, building this in the 1960s, there are some things that just don't make sense for a modern family today. Handicap accessibility is a large one, adding more units that are handicap accessible, as well as units that allow for those with hearing or visual impairments. We have some structural repairs that need to be done, both the interior work, also keeping up with some of the brick, limestone, siding, roofing, those types of things. And energy efficiency will be a large part of this. More efficient windows, also heating and cooling systems. We also give many units, all of the units, even if they have been recently renovated, new flooring. So we have a laminate vinyl tile flooring that we'll be using, new kitchen cabinets, countertops. Also, dishwashers will be added, and providing the washer and dryers. I mentioned the high efficiency furnaces, windows, new roofing, site lighting, all of those things. Also touched on adding more one-bedroom units, which is a huge, huge need. A lot of questions about resident relocation. So we will be paying for all the costs for residents to relocate to another unit within Crestmont. They should not be out of a unit for more than 60 to 90 days until they move. Once their phase is up, right, they'll be moving to a renovated unit between 60 and 90 days. And we're starting that process, communicating that with our residents right now and making sure if there's any accommodations or special considerations we should be thinking about. We go through a pretty thorough one-on-one interview process with them. And no new jobs created, but we do estimate that 10 jobs will be retained. Another part that I want to say is many of you know that we're currently doing renovation work in our other former public housing communities, Reverend Butler and Walnut Woods. I'm proud to say about 29% of the financing for that renovation work has gone to either Section 3, which is a low-income business, or women minority-owned businesses. So pretty proud of that number. And we expect a lot of the same vendors to be completing the work in Crestmont. We are doing this major refinancing efforts through what's called the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. It was approved by Congress in 2012, and the big goal was to help fund the billions and billions of dollars in backlog for capital repairs and public housing. So essentially, it allows housing authorities to leverage public and private debt to help address those capital improvements. We mentioned moving to the Section 8 platform, has a long-term contract. I believe it's 20 years through a contract that must be renewed for another 20 years. So at least 40 years within this structure. And residents, of course, continue to pay 30% of their income towards rent, much the same as they do as a public housing resident. And they also have rights under public housing, like grievance procedures, right to return to the property, right to organize their residence council. All of those stay in place. And we also have ongoing public stewardship of the property, clear definitions of the ownership and use. I'll also mention the housing authority retains ownership of the land through a long-term ground lease. And the RAD program, it's cost neutral. One reason that HUD approved it, or sorry, Congress approved it, is because it's cost neutral. It's the same amount of funding through the public housing program as Section 8. But I will say just in this last year, there were a few great changes in the affordable housing realm. One was fixing the 4% low-income housing tax credit. That brought more potential financing to this deal. And also we pursue something that's called Section 18. It's a way HUD allows you to have higher rental subsidy potential. On our last deal, we could only do 25% of the units through Section 18. On this deal, because of some new changes in the federal regulations, we'll be able to do 80% of the units at a higher potential subsidy amount. So that's one reason why this bond ask is so much larger than our last one. Just ability to raise more financing, and also the scale of Crestmont is we're going from 116 units on our last deal to 196 units with this deal. So I think next we just move on to a little bit more detail about the bonds. and
Yes.
I'm not an expert in this.
Thank you, Amber. That was thorough and helpful. So this slide is meant to demonstrate a couple things. One, the bond and credit structure of this particular financing, and then also to kind of show the conduit nature and the role that the city is acting. So from the city's perspective, this will look very similar to the Reverend Butler Walnut Woods project, which was also a RAD conversion. And as Amber alluded to, the not to exceed amount for this particular request is $30 million. So a little bit higher than the last request. And I think Amber explained that well. So on this slide, Crestmont, the project, the borrower is at the bottom. IHCDA awards the credits and bond volume to the borrower and the project. And this occurred in part because of your body and the city adopting the inducement back in December. That was a prerequisite to making the application of IHCDA, and the volume and credits were awarded in late June. So as currently contemplated, the city will act as the bond issuer and issue the bonds, which are purchased by a bond purchaser, proceeds of which would be loaned to the project. So the city would enter into a financing agreement with a fiscal agent, and then also a loan agreement with the borrower as well. And then on the right side of the screen is meant to demonstrate the borrower structure and then show the flow of tax credit equity that will be flowing into the project through syndication of tax credits that the IHCDA awarded to the project. And thankfully for the 4% fix that Amber referenced, this is where some additional equity financing will flow into the project. We can go to the next slide, Larry. So this is our timeline, of which we're already to, a hybrid between steps 2 and 3. Step 1 was ongoing when this group was before you in December, where we were awarded the inducement resolution and then made the application of IHCDA for volume and credits. Currently, Amber and her team are, negotiating bond terms and picking participants for the working group, such as lending institution, tax credit investor, and performing other due diligence. As we mentioned, step 3 has occurred in late June, so we're ready for going before the EDC and the City Council for final approval, which will allow the bond issuance, and the EDC will hold a public hearing as required by state and federal law. So we can go to the next slide, please. So some of the most important, characteristics of these transactions to hit upon are the bonds are being issued pursuant to 36(7), 11.9, and 12. As we mentioned, the EDC will hold a public hearing. You guys will issue a project report as well and make a recommendation for the council to approve the bond ordinance. Perhaps the most important thing folks like to see is that the bonds will not be payable from the taxes or be a general obligation of the city. These bonds or notes in this situation are payable solely from the revenues of the project. So no impact on the city's constitutional debt limit or bank qualified limit. And as the first slide that I reviewed or discussed or presented on demonstrated, the city acts only as a conduit, allowing the borrower to access capital at a tax exempt rate and receive the influx of equity through the syndication of tax credits. So bottom line, no ongoing obligations or administration by the city and no exposure to the city for these notes. Borrower is responsible for all tax covenants, payments, and indemnifies the city in all respects. So pure conduit deal. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm sure Tyler or myself or Amber are happy to answer or discuss any topics you'd like to at this time.
just before we turn it back over to the board, Chris, would you mind just discussing the difference in terminology? We got some of these questions from City Council earlier, the terminology difference between notes and bonds, and how those differ, or are those the same under the statute?
Similar and the same under the statute. So they're both debt instruments. And perhaps we go with one term based off the purchaser and what they like to see, or the structure of the financing. Currently, this particular project is contemplated to be a Freddie Tell, unless there are some updates to that structure that I'm not aware of. And those are usually called notes. So for state law purposes, the terms can be interchanged as well. So
Yeah,
I don't know if Tyler has any additional thoughts on that.
No, yeah, that's a little more context. That was a good explanation. So yeah, because it's Freddie Mac is contemplated to be the ultimate purchaser, it's all about how as Chris said, the purchaser wants to treat it on their books. A quote unquote note is more akin to a loan versus owning a security. And so banks like to have loans on their books more than holding passive securities. It triggers fewer regulatory requirements for them.
That's perfect. Thank you.
In my world, the difference between a note and a bond is the maturity. It's the length of the life of the note.
Yeah, you're right. In some of the other state laws statutes, there are defined term notes, but the 36.712 doesn't make that distinction. So I think it is labeling here versus actual type of, it's still a bond for our purposes, but we'll call it a note for the purchaser to be satisfied.
Any other questions from the board?
I do have one question, and that has to do with, and it's sort of I don't know that it's our purview. I'm certainly asking as a citizen. My understanding is that the city's at no risk, and I want to be clear as to how that indemnification happens. The issuer is indemnifying. The issuer, I believe, is the entity, right? I guess the question I have is, where is the city's guarantee coming from as far as any risk, or is the risk disclaimed in the bond indenture? And all we're doing is blessing it for the purpose of making it municipal.
I can take a first swing at that if you want.
Sure.
Gentlemen can follow up. So in the funding agreements themselves and the refunding agreement, so the city of Bloomington is the issuer in this case, but it is the borrower that's indemnifying the issuer in addition to the bank. That says that we don't have any liability. That's memorialized in both of those agreements, that the city isn't taking on liability. Rather, we're just acting as a pass-through entity to pass the funds from the bank itself to the borrower.
But we're not standing by in the sense that if the borrower, I'm sorry, if the borrower were to become insolvent or be unable to pay, that the city would then be on the hook.
That's correct. Yeah, there's no backup of general obligation or city liability. All the liability for the debt stays with the project itself.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the actual agreements too that Larry mentioned, there's a form of the note that the purchasers will hold that has big capital letters that says the city's not pledging any money or revenues other than what's described in the loan agreement, right? Which is
the only revenue is the revenue from the actual project itself.
Right. Yeah, basically saying all we can do is pass on what we get from the borrower. So
Okay. Sorry to take your time for that, but I just always feel it's important to kick that risk tire, mainly because of some kind of crazy stuff I saw or read about, and I should say, in municipal financing back in the mid 2000s. So.
well, I just feel bad for Larry because now we know he read the documents. So.
All right.
It's Alex Crowley. Can I ask a question? Is there a sort of value that is assigned to the city's role in this that you can quantify?
Question. Was that question for Ice Miller?
Yeah, for Ice Miller.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say, one, you could look at it as it's the value of the entire amount of tax credit equity that's getting received, because without the tax exemption on the bonds, that's what allows the tax credits to come in. In terms of the actual borrowing rate between taxable and tax exempt paper, that's just a function of comparing basically treasury rates to what this ends up at, which the Freddie Mac product that we're talking about here for the execution of the bonds is based on a floating treasury rate plus a spread. So, usually end up 5%, 4.5% recently, sometimes down to 4%. But so that usually you'd say, because the holders don't have to claim taxes on their interest, it's whatever the corporate tax rate is the value of the actual tax exemption on the interest, but it does unlock the credits.
I think to add to that a little bit about the unlocking of the credits, there could be an alternative issuer, an IHCDA, which carries a little bit more cost. But I think borrowers and folks working on these projects like to go through local issuers to involve the folks that live and see these projects on a daily basis, to make sure they're involved in the future livelihood of the projects, if that makes sense as well.
Thank you very much. Jeff, you had a follow-up question?
Oh, actually, I was just going to say essentially the same thing. I had always thought that kind of the real difference was essentially like a 1% loan origination fee versus what the state could provide as a lender. I mean, is that approximately what that difference in value is?
Yes. I'm sorry. I looked at it from a different perspective. So you're right.
No, I mean, you're right. In terms of, I see the perspective you looked at in broad. What is the advantage that a public sector issuer has versus just going on the private markets? And I was just thinking the difference between the city doing it versus the state is it saves that origination fee.
You're absolutely right.
And so I certainly support this. This is great. I'm really excited that we're doing this again. So I don't really have any other questions except one out of more curiosity than anything. What kind of discount does the investor get on the credits? I mean, essentially, what percentage do they pay of the value of the credits?
Amber, I don't know if you've gotten any letters of intent back or anything like that. I don't know what credit pricing generally is these days.
I think we got 91 or 92 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think another recent project in Indiana, I saw 89 cents. So that's good, Amber. That's awesome.
I think we did really well. We had, I think 4 bids, and so there's lots of things that go into the bid, but of course the credit pricing is a major one. Yeah, we think we did pretty well.
Very good.
Great, thank you.
Other questions by either members of the commission or members of the staff? Any questions by any members of the public? We have before us in the packet resolution 21-05 for the sake of convenience and because the resolution has been published, I'll dispense with reading the entire resolution, which is 3 pages. But I would entertain a motion on the resolution by either of the commissioners.
I move approval of resolution 21-05.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner.
For roll call, Malcolm Webb,
Votes aye.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger,
Yes.
I believe the ayes have it on that one. Resolution passes. Do we have anything for the good of the order?
Yeah, there's one more thing. So there's one more step to this process that you all need to complete.
Sorry, thank you.
Oh, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. There's one more step to this process before City Council gives its final approval, which is a public hearing. We need to give 10 days notice for that. So we would ask that the commission, if possible, reconvene sometime between August 25th and August 31st. If that's possible, that's kind of a narrow window. We can send out a little bit of a doodle poll in the next day for you all to respond. But I would propose maybe if sometime August 26th would work in that afternoon for everybody, we would notice and have a public hearing where we would receive any public comment on this resolution and the note issue for the Crestmont Community RAD conversion.
Yeah, happy to do that. So we didn't get the 10 days on this resolution.
That's right. Yeah, there wasn't a 10-day so for the public hearing. So it'll just keep it open. We thought the best course of action was to actually have a meeting of the EDC so this could be done in public. Technically, staff could do it, but it seems like it's going to be a little bit better for the transparency of the process, just to make sure that that's an actual open public meeting with the commission itself.
Well, my understanding is that anybody can join this meeting with the public access, the Zoom access. But I'm happy. I also have a great deal of respect for the posting requirements of the Indiana Public Records Act, and the Public Meetings Law. So can we set a date? And also, in effect, because of the meeting requirement, we really don't have legal passage of the resolution. We just need to go through and actually pass that after you have it posted, correct?
The resolution's fine. The resolution itself is fine. What we need to do, though, is hold a public hearing for comment on the bonds or the notes itself. And Chris and Tyler, feel free to step in.
Oh, I
if you
see.
like I'm misstating anything.
Sorry, the resolution's good. You need another hearing on the notes themselves. Got it. Sorry, now I get it. My
Yeah,
apologies.
it's a hearing that's specific to 36.712 beyond just the open door public records.
Sorry, you're talking to a group that usually does tax abatement, so thank you for educating me.
Larry, I'll go ahead and volunteer to connect with the commissioners and schedule something. We'll start with August 26th, since that's what you had suggested, and see if we can make something work, if that's okay with the commissioners. For me to follow up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I apologize for this inconvenience, but typically if no one shows up to the public hearing, 15 minutes should suffice just to share that last tidbit. So apologize for speaking out of turn, but wanted to share that it didn't need to be a long window.
Thanks. Okay, great.
Okay.
Jane, I wanted to just throw something in for just the good of the order.
Recording in progress.
Sorry about that. Yeah, go for it.
There's a possibility, commissioners, that a tax abatement might make its way across your desks pretty quickly here. It depends on the council's potential schedule in September. And so we're balancing, is it possible to do that at the next regularly scheduled meeting and still have time to work with the council should this even come up? We're negotiating right now. If it does, if the timing works, then so be it. And just kind of heads up that it may be coming. If it doesn't work from a council timing perspective, there's a possibility that we would try to have this be an item at this special meeting that Jane will be communicating to you at. So that to give us a little bit more flexibility on the council schedule. So I just want to make sure you're aware that that may be coming. And again, it's not guaranteed, but just as a heads up.
I have no problem with that if it provides the additional, for the convenience of the group, if we're going to have that meeting for the bond anyway, if it gives you all some extra productivity to get something else done, I don't see a problem with that. Either at that meeting, or if you need to do 2 separate back-to-back meetings of the Economic Development Commission, so that one's the bond meeting and the other one is a resolution, I've got no problem with that.
And we could do that all in one meeting, so that's no problem.
Very good. All right. Let's throw it all, whatever you want to throw on that agenda.
The gating factor on that is whether or not the negotiation can wrap up in time for that particular meeting too. So there's something at the front end, there's something at the back. We'll try to figure it out.
Of course. Very good. So next meeting is not actually September 21st, but that would be our next regular meeting under the new schedule. And you said that the next meeting that you're looking at might be August 26th, did I hear?
Right, yeah,
All right. And did you suggest a time or not?
4 o'clock.
Yeah, very good. All right.
And that appeared to work for everyone. So we'll update the meeting invite, communicate via doodle poll about timing on the 26th. And if we can get everything done on the 26th and don't have new business arise in September, I think, Larry, we were thinking we would take a knee during September, since you guys will have done double duty in August.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we all like seeing each other on a regular basis, so the more meetings, the better, I'm sure, for everybody's schedule. But we would consider canceling, I guess, that September meeting if we have to, and have to go a whole month without seeing each other.
Well, I am grateful to the members of this commission and to the staff for having a fairly efficient group. With that said, are there anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? All.
Aye.
I think you can just adjourn us, actually. We're at the end of the agenda. You get, as
Yeah.
the chair, you get to
I'll
adjourn.
I'll adjourn. Goodbye.
Thanks,
Thank you very much,
everyone.
Thank you.